Okay, we're back on the 1980 Ford F350 project. Today we're going to take advantage of some warm weather we're here having on December 3rd in North Carolina. It is 75 degrees. So for everybody up north, I feel for you, but this is why I moved here. First thing I got to take care of on this truck before I can move it around anymore is I have to replace the front to rear brake line, hard line. It has a rusty spot in it that popped when I moved the truck up here. So I ordered a roll of tubing. 3/16 tubing is the size tubing that this truck has on it that runs to the rear. Not 1/4 inch, but this is a nickel copper tubing, and it is comes in a 25-foot roll. It's very easy to bend by hand. Tubing bender makes it even easier for nice bends you can get in it. But it's corrosion resistant, and like I said, it's easy to work with. So you can get this through several different suppliers. I just happened to order it from Amazon, and I had it in a couple of days. The kit's nice because it comes with your whole roll of tubing, and it also comes with some tubing nuts, various sizes. They're all 3/16 hole centered, so you don't have to worry about reusing your rusty tube nuts when you get the line apart. So I have to take the line off of this truck yet. It runs from the proportioning valve up here in the engine compartment, goes all the way to the back where it connects to the flex hose that feeds the rear axle. So we're going to crawl into the truck and get everything unhooked and try and get it out in as much of one piece as I can so that I can kind of use it as a template to form this line and get it as close to original as possible. Okay, proportioning valve in this truck is located right down here. The line that we have to take off is on the back side, so unfortunately I got to lay on my back under this truck to undo everything. We'll get it all undone, pull it out from the truck, lay it out on the floor in the shop, and uncoil our copper tubing roll and try and get it formed up as close as we can to the original, and we'll flare the ends up and get it put in the truck. Ashton, what are you doing under here? You don't know what? Are you fixing up the exhaust for me? All right. You work on that end of it, and I'm going to work on getting this brake line out, and maybe we can get this truck fixed. Huh?
I have one wrench.
Yep, you have your wrench. I got my wrench.
But I have no wrenches.
You don't have any wrenches? Why not?
Because I want to get...
Alright, don't get in the way of the camera.
Here we are. I'm watching Pop. This is going to take forever.
Yeah, this is going to take forever.
This will take for years and years.
Years and years, huh?
Yeah. Oh.
That's a long time.
Yeah, but
You think I'll have this ready before you're able to drive?
Yeah, yes. Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay, we'll try.
Okay.
Okay, we're at the back where the line meets the flex line here for the rear axle.
And I'm sitting next to you.
I know you want to be right up in here where I'm working at, bud, but I need you to stay right where you're at and let me work on this back here.
Okay, I will work right here.
Okay.
What is this?
This truck was a northern truck, so even though it's been very well undercoated from the factory or aftermarket, it does have some areas of rust under here. One of them just happens to be this brake line. So we're going to go ahead and spray this with some PB Blaster penetrant, and I've got my flare wrenches. These are special wrenches made for undoing and tightening brake lines and fuel lines so that you don't round off the nuts. Hopefully we can get this to break loose. If not, we'll have to grab a hold of it with a pair of vice grips and just try and get it to come loose. Like I said in the beginning, we've got new tube nuts, so I don't need to reuse any of the old ones, but I do need them to come out. So we'll go ahead and get this sprayed. Probably should have sprayed that earlier, but get this set on here.
Mom, come on, look out of here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we are a size in between what I've got due to the rust.
The rust is the panic.
I think this used to be a 7/16. Now just Ashton, you gotta stay out of the way, buddy.
Okay, but
No, back behind me, please. Come on.
Do you need this?
All right, you gotta stay back over
Do you
there.
need this, Ashton? Okay.
Yeah. It's too big for a 3/8.
I need that. I need this for this. Thank you, Violet.
Yay.
We got
I'm gonna go grab a metric size and see if I can get that to fit. If not,
We got.
hunting to a pair of vice grips.
We got. This.
Okay, I have changed wrenches. I've used every size I have due to the rust on that tube nut. It is a non-size now, so we're gonna go ahead and use a pair of vice grips and see if we can't break this nut loose.
Oh, I'm gonna go over
If not,
there
I'm
too.
gonna be getting a new flex line also.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Okay, that actually broke it loose. I just gotta work it back and forth until it comes out because the tube gets rust built up on it and then the nut doesn't want to work its way up the tube, so you just have to work it back and forth until it's loosened everything up and you can get it to come out of the
What is this?
come out of the fitting.
Sally, because
That's something.
I like rainbow.
This
and
happens at times
purple.
too, the tube will just break. So the tube broke, which is no big deal. You know, we replaced the whole thing anyhow. This is gonna be real fun to get out of here. Well, I'm just gonna continue on and take this out, and then I'm gonna work my way up the frame and try and remove all the clips that hold it on the frame and figure out how to get this brake line pulled out of the frame. Okay, I got the line out of the truck. It broke where the leak was, and it was already a two-piece line, so that made it a little easier to get out because of all the bracketry and the bends in the frame. They can be tricky to get out sometimes. So I think what I'm going to do, instead of a two-piece line, I'm going to make this a three-piece line, which it doesn't matter. You can make it 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 pieces, however many you need to be able to get it in the frame properly, as long as you do your flares and your connections the correct way. And that was one thing I wanted to talk about, was the proper way to join tubing together. And I've got some fittings here, and I'll show you these. This is a female flare fitting. It's a joint. It uses your tube nuts, and you put this on your tube, you flare your end so you get a seal, and these will screw together and join your line together. This is the proper connection for joining line together. I have seen, and this is totally incorrect, it will work in a pinch, don't get me wrong, but this is never a permanent fix. This is what's called a compression fitting. it's a 5-piece fitting. You have a joiner piece, you've got end caps, and you have these little barrels that will go on your tubing. So you would slide your nut on the tubing, then your barrel goes on the tubing, and then everything goes into the centerpiece. And as you tighten this, the barrel will squeeze the line and it will hold the fitting, hold the line inside the fitting. Now, like I said, these will work temporarily to get you home if you're stuck somewhere, if you can't get tubing, you don't have a flaring tool, and you need to get the line fixed. But you never want to leave this on the vehicle past that point. Once you get it where you need to be and you can repair it correctly, that's what you need to do. Because these are not designed to take the brake pressure that can build in a line. If you have a panic stop and you have to slam on the brakes, you create a lot of pressure, hydraulic pressure in that line, and it can pop the tube out of this, and then you lose your brakes. So, temporary fitting, get you home. Proper way to fix it: tube nut, flare it, use a joiner, put the lines together, permanent fix. Okay, I've uncoiled my tubing and cut a section here. I did some measurements on this piece, and it works out to, it's right about 4 foot in length. You may need just a tad extra because you're going to be flaring this. So what we're going to do is, first thing you want to do after you cut your tubing, the inside diameter in your tubing is going to be a little small. So you want to have some sort of a tool to open it back up, and I use a file end, and I just kind of, you place it in there and just gently push it down and turn it, and it'll open up the inside of that tubing, and it'll get it back to the right length, right size. But you also want to make sure you've got a nice square end on your tubing. So you just take a file and you want to run your file across the tubing until you got it squared off real good. Check it for any burrs with your edges, and that'll leave you ready to do your flare with your flaring tool. So we're going to use this as a template to get our bends in this tubing. So basically you just want to take it, lay it down next to it, start at one end, and put your bends in where they need to be. Just kind of follow this piece of tubing along. Being as this new tubing bends quite easily, so if you make a little bit of a mistake, it's easy to take it back out. Bring this around. Now I'm going to leave this last bend until after I do my flare on here, because it may not leave me enough room to put my tool on the tubing to get my flare in it. So we'll make the last bend after I put this in my flaring tool and get my flare on there with my nut. Okay, many of you may be familiar with a smaller, more compact style of a flaring tool. It's manual. It's got a little C-clamp and some dies that you use. You clamp your tube in there, you spin the C-clamp with the pointer on it, and it'll do your flares. But when you do as many custom lines as I've done, a flaring tool like this is a really good investment. This is a hydraulic flaring tool, so it makes doing all kinds of flares so much easier. But it works in a similar fashion. It's just a little bit more involved getting everything set up. So the first thing you want to make sure you always do is put your flare nut on your tube first, because once your flare is done, obviously you can't get the nut on. Then you got to cut the tube and start over again, and then you may not have enough length. So always put your nut on first, and then you want to pull out the appropriate size die for the tubing you're working on. And again, we are using 3/16, so this is a 3/16 die that will hold the piece of tubing in this crimper. And you want to just get the tool set up by pulling this back. Place your die inside. This is where it gets tricky. You almost need 10 hands. So you get your die. You want to make sure your tubing is sticking through the die enough, and you usually bring it up right even with the surface of the die. Right there. And you get it in your tool. Get it clamped in. First die you use is going to have a center point to it. So this will go inside the tube and it'll squish it down and mushroom the top out. And that's why it's important to have that center of that tube opened up so this die will fit inside. Alright. Get it preset. Close off your valve. Give this a squeeze. You can see in there, you see how that mushrooms out the tube. Now for the second step, you use the pointed 45-degree die. And basically the same thing, you get it lined up with the center of the tube. Get it preloaded. Give it a few squeezes. Well, tighten up. Close your hydraulic valve. Give it a few squeezes. And that is going to give you a double flare, which is the proper flare for a brake line. Again, we're dealing with high pressures on hydraulic tubing, so you want to give yourself a double flare. A single flare, when you do your 45-degree flare on the tube, it can crack if it's just a single wall. So you always do a double wall, and you do this type of a flare, and then you won't have any problems with the tubing cracking. And then you have the proper seat for your brake line to set into your tube. Now this will go into a brass connector, and this will connect the two pieces of tubing together. So I've got 6 more of these to do, and two more pieces of line, bending them similar to this, and then I'll have my new brake lines ready to go in the truck. Okay, I've got all my flares done, new tube nuts on, and got my lines all bent up. As you can see, here's the original versus my new one for the front, and my new center section piece, and then the back third. Like I said, I did this line in 3 pieces since it's going to be easier to install back in the truck with all the brackets and everything this has to go around. When it broke, it made it easy to come out, so we just add one union joint in the middle and we'll get it installed. So here we're ready to put this line back into the truck, and then we'll go ahead with bleeding the brakes out, and then we'll have a good brake system again. Alright, back underneath the truck, and I've got the new line installed. You can see it into the flex hose back here at the back, and it comes down the frame, and we go all the way along the frame, which you can't see because it's hidden behind a bunch of brackets, but it goes up in here, follows all the way up, and then, sorry about the shaky camera, but as you can see, it ends up back in the distribution block, back up in the engine compartment. So this is all ready for the brakes to be bled out, and then we'll have good brakes back on the truck again, and I'll be able to move it in and out of the shop so I can continue on with getting the trim stripped off of this thing and getting her ready for some body work.